So, you came back to die with your city.
No, I came back to stop you. Hello YouTubers, my name is Frederick Lopez, and yes, I am already on my 200th video on this channel. Time flies. Even though I was mostly inactive my first year, I got to 200 videos pretty quick, and recently I went over Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and my overview of the Dark Knight trilogy. So here in this 200th video, I'm going to give my review and thoughts of the 2012 film, The Dark Knight Rises. Now, I already went over my initial thoughts back in 2012 on my Dark Knight of Steel channel. You can check out my initial thoughts back then, but I warn you, the quality is low. It's in 360p and very low quality, and I wasn't really doing review videos back then, so it's just going to be kind of a long rambling of initial thoughts. And I thought fondly of the film back then, and I still think highly of it now. Matter of fact, maybe it's a little bit underrated in a regard, but it's still a phenomenal film, and let me just get to it. It is directed by Christopher Nolan, stars Christian Bale as Batman/Bruce Wayne, Tom Hardy as Bane, Marion Cotillard as Miranda Tate, Anne Hathaway as Selina Kyle, Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jonathan Blake, Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon, Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox, and Michael Caine as Alfred Pennyworth. So yeah, a lot was riding on The Dark Knight Rises. The Dark Knight was an immensely popular and successful film back in 2008, and it took a couple of years for this one to come out. As a matter of fact, nobody was sure if Christopher Nolan was going to come back to do a third one. Luckily, he did come back for a third film, and he said he was very leery of sequels because you don't really have that many great sequels, and in addition to that, you don't have that many great sequels to sequels. Godfather didn't even escape that curse with a third one. But he also thought, hey, I don't want anybody else to screw up what we had, so he decided to conclude the series. And that's one thing I have to say about this. It's great that they went into this film knowing it was going to be a conclusion. Everybody wanted to conclude this story arc of Bruce Wayne/Batman. So where does the story begin? The story starts 8 years after The Dark Knight. He stopped being Batman, but the problem is, Bruce Wayne isn't doing much of living. He didn't move on from the cowl. He's still struggling over the injuries he had in Dark Knight, as well as the loss of Rachel Dawes. And we start off with this great prologue. Nolan managed to top himself and do something completely different for the opening. You have this man captured who ends up being Bane, and this whole plane heist sequence where they basically shoot these CIA agents, get Bane and this Dr. Pavel guy who's basically a molecular engineer, and they rescue him basically. They kidnap him because they need him. It starts off with such a spectacular fashion, all done practically, all done for real. Great way to open it with IMAX. Then we're introduced to Gotham City, and they're celebrating the anniversary of the Dent Act. After Harvey Dent died, nobody knew he was Harvey Two-Face or killed the people in Dark Knight. They think that the Batman did it. So Harvey Dent is looked upon as a hero in this film, and under the Dent Act, basically criminals don't get parole and they're in prison. They locked up almost all the mob, all the criminals, so Gotham City is in peacetime now. And we really get to see the effect of this not only on Bruce Wayne but Commissioner Gordon, about living with his lie and the repercussions of The Dark Knight. And that's one thing I have to say, The Dark Knight is one of the few films where the villain wins, but also the Joker's actions, the things he did, still have effects into this next film. And it's just great because this film not only ties and pays homage to Dark Knight, but it really ties into Batman Begins. So he's not Batman. He walks around with a cane. He has a beard. He's very pale. He's a recluse. He's almost like the Bruce Wayne that's in the Michael Keaton films in a way. Anyways, we're introduced to Selina Kyle, who poses as a maid. She steals fingerprints and pearls from Bruce Wayne's safe that belonged to his mother. This causes him to investigate a bit. Meanwhile, we're introduced to these killings. Jonathan Blake, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, is introduced, and he starts noticing that bodies are ending up in the sewers. He realizes they're from the orphanage that he grew up from. So he starts investigating. Meanwhile, you have these set of events that basically intertwine Catwoman, Batman, and this new face of Bane, played by Tom Hardy. They're building an underground army and live in the sewers, and Commissioner Gordon gets fatally wounded. He doesn't die. He goes through the sewers and he's in the hospital. He's incapacitated. So Joseph Gordon-Levitt's John Blake goes to Wayne Manor. He deduces that Bruce Wayne was the Batman. Bruce Wayne visited that orphanage one time and he figured he was Batman. Now originally I thought it was going to be the kid from Batman Begins, little Joffrey. No. It's still cool though, because Jonathan Blake in a way is a combination of the Robins. His mother died when he was young, much like Jason Todd supposedly. His dad died when he was a little bit older through a gambling debt, much like Tim Drake in the cartoon. Then we have him as a police officer, much like Dick Grayson when he became Nightwing and was working in Bloodhaven. So you kind of have a different set of combinations from the Robins into this one character of John Blake. Meanwhile, Bruce Wayne is checking on his company. They're not making any profits, and he's thinking about getting back in the game. He confronts Selena Kyle. There's a great dance sequence there, and she warns him that a storm's coming. There's a stock market heist done in spectacular fashion. This film really brings up political topics that were important then after the Occupy Wall Street movement, but really are felt more now in the world and country we live in today, even after the 5 years of its release. But it's a great heist scene, all in IMAX, and the Batman comes back. They pay homage to The Dark Knight Returns, where the police officer's like, oh boy, we're in for a show tonight. I love that part. Only thing I hate though, he has this like little device, it's like an EMP device, and the police officer shoots it after it's used once, and I'm like, what was the use of that scene? Why did the police officer shoot it? It was just annoying. I love Batman's face towards him, but that's one of my nitpicks of this film, along with many others I would get to later. After that, we have a spectacular police chase, very, very massive, very action-packed with the music. And then we're introduced to John Daggett, and John Daggett was actually a character that created Clayface in the comics. He's somebody who wants to own Wayne Enterprises, and he's working with Bane right now. And Selena Kyle has to have something from him, and he doesn't offer it to her. So Batman saves Selena Kyle, and there's this giant fight scene, and he almost runs into Bane. Bane just misses Batman and Selena Kyle. So it's kind of crazy. He's basically the Batman back in action, but is he? Alfred confronts him, and Alfred's worried during this whole movie that he's not ready to be Batman, that time has passed, his body and mind are long gone. He can use his resources and mind in other ways, other than being Batman. And he basically told him that he never wanted him to come back to Gotham, that he hoped he found him in a different life and stuff. He went to this cafe in Paris, and he would imagine meeting him there, but saying nothing to him. Basically, he said Gotham has brought him nothing but pain and sorrow, and he wanted more for Bruce Wayne. Which kind of pays into a Good Will Hunting scene later, but it's just kind of sweet, but also kind of tragic, because Alfred knows that Bruce is not the same man he was, and that he cannot go up against this guy named Bane. It's just very sad, a very emotional scene here where Alfred confesses to him that he burnt the letter. Bruce thinks that Rachel would have waited for him, that was his great love, that he doesn't have a purpose or life beyond that, and Alfred confesses to burning the letter from the end of The Dark Knight. The emotion here is very high. Michael Caine gives a brilliant performance because you see that Alfred is pretty much Bruce's father and that he's cared for him ever since he was born. And by leaving, it's the only way to save his life and not be Batman or face Bane. And it's quite sad, and I just love Christian Bale's acting with the emotion in his eyes. Very much like the scene between Michael and Kay in Godfather 2. How dare you use Rachel to try to destroy my world? And he's like, you think we're going to shake hands and everything will be fine? And he's just like, no, I know what this means. And he's like, goodbye, Alfred. And he leaves. And I was upset in the next scene because he wakes up and then he's just like, Alfred? I'm like, bastard, you told him to leave. Lucius Fox tells Bruce Wayne that he's bankrupt. They used the fingerprints Selena Kyle stole, and they pretty much invested in some bad stocks and shares, and now he's almost bankrupt. But he has this energy project that this woman, played by Marion Cotillard, Miranda Tate, is interested in. So he aligns with her so she can take over Wayne Enterprises instead of John Daggett. Daggett figures out that Bane's up to something more. Bane kills him, and Tom Hardy's just vicious and just very merciless in this film. He plays such an intimidating villain. I mean, his voice is pretty much like Sean Connery and Darth Vader had a baby. Bane is a very different type of villain. Joker tested Batman's limits and morality and tested him in psychological ways. This villain tests him physically. You really get a more physical villain in this film for Batman to go against, which he's never faced in these films really, except for maybe Ra's al Ghul. You kind of have a brief romance with Miranda Tate and Bruce Wayne goes and gets Selena Kyle's help, and he dresses as Batman, and together they're gonna fight Bane and stop him, but Catwoman double crosses him. You have an amazing fight scene. Oh my god, this is just brutal and just all around hard to watch and intense. No music. The music's pretty much the sounds of the punches, the kicks, the grunts. Spectacular shot in IMAX. This is a really, really good fight scene. The first fight between Bane and Batman is just spectacular. You find out he's in league with a League of Shadows, and he's here to fulfill Ra's al Ghul's destiny. So you have the sins of the past really coming back to haunt Batman. And of course, as always, he breaks him. They get it straight from the comic books where he breaks Batman's back. It's just amazing. I was just like, wow. We've never seen Batman that powerless in any film, really. And this is the first time he's faced against somebody who's just a physical threat that he cannot beat. Then you have other sequences where Bane blows up the majority of Gotham City. Oh my god, it's such an intense war film. He traps the cops underground, and pretty much he says if the Air Force comes in, the Army comes in, we're going to blow up Gotham City. He gets the reactor that Miranda Tate invested with Bruce Wayne, and they make it into a nuclear bomb, basically. They get that Dr. Pavel to set it up so it won't be an energy source, it'd be a nuclear bomb. Basically a time bomb that's deteriorating, that will deteriorate and blow up Gotham City within 5 months. And it is insane. He basically kills that Dr. Pavel guy in front of Gotham, and he says, "One of you is a trigger man." And Gotham is just an array of chaos. He also brings up Harvey Dent, and he finds this letter that Commissioner Gordon had earlier about the truth of what happened to Harvey, and he pretty much has a confession from James Gordon about him resigning and him telling the truth that Batman wasn't the killer. Harvey Dent did all those things. Everybody loses it. They free the prisoners from Blackgate, and it is just hell on earth. I mean, it's just pure chaos. There's a lot taken from A Tale of Two Cities in this as well. You have all the rich people dragged out on the streets. It is just in pure chaos. Meanwhile, we cut to Batman, and he's in this prison that Bane grew up in, and his back's broken. It has to heal. The doctor sets it in place, and he's very weak. There's a cool little glimpse of Ra's al Ghul, Liam Neeson, in a vision, and it's really cool because I thought it was going to be the Lazarus Pit. I was like, oh my god, he's alive, but no, it was just a vision. You find out that there's a child that was born in the prison that was Ra's al Ghul's child, and that was the wife he was talking about in Batman Begins. So it's doing a really good job at tying back into the original and really making the trilogy come full circle, especially for one that's not planned. That's pretty impressive. Meanwhile, we're cut to James Gordon and John Blake, and they're with like the Resistance, basically, with like the other police officers that are left over, Miranda Tate and Lucius Fox. So we get to see where the characters are, and my one con with this film is that it's a little lazy and the editing is really fast, meaning it goes by quick. It's about 165 minutes, yet feels shorter than The Dark Knight and Batman Begins. This middle, he's in the prison for 5 months, but it feels like 5 minutes, and that's my problem with the film. They could have done more in the middle or split up the film in 2 parts. Like, it just feels, it's really good in the first act, and then the second half's just kind of like, the middle is the weakest part of the film because the beginning and the ending is strong, the first and third act. The second act is just really kind of sloppy and just kind of brushes through everything. But it's still an enjoyable film, much like Return of the Jedi. I look at the Dark Knight trilogy like the Star Wars trilogy. You have the first one, you have The Empire Strikes Back, you have the Dark Knight. They build upon what the first one started. Maybe are the best films. But like Jedi, Dark Knight Rises is a highly enjoyable film and a satisfying conclusion. So I give it that, and it's also highly rewatchable. I would watch Return of the Jedi and Dark Knight Rises more than the other two. Even though the other two are probably better films, this one's more enjoyable. So after a series of failures, he finally climbs out of the pit, and I love it because he gets a spirit of fear back. He undoes everything that was done in Batman Begins, and in a way, he fell through the cave. It's very reminiscent of that, of a birth and rebirth, and also him falling at the beginning of the first film, and this one with him rising. He gets a certain part of himself that was gone ever since he was a kid from that day, with his parents getting shot, falling in the Batcave. So he's reborn, and the scene, the whole Desi Basara, Basara, Desi Basara is just epic. Him climbing the bats, and it's very heroic. Now, somehow he gets back into Gotham City, which I don't know. I'm thinking it's through the southeast tunnels, like under the Wayne Manor. But he gets back, gets with Selena Kyle, rescues Lucius Fox, rescues Gordon, And you also have a cool cameo of Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow as a judge. And they're just basically being judge and jury and giving people hope. Bane said that hope is the ultimate tool for despair. You can't have despair without a false sense of hope. There's a lot of themes of hope and despair and ultimately pain in the way that Dark Knight was about order and chaos and Batman Begins is about fear. This is about pain and hope. And I love it. So he rescues him, and then they pretty much have a final battle. It is a spectacular final battle, and I just love that final fight with Bane and Batman where he's just like,
"So, you came back to die with your city."
And he's just like, "No, I came back to stop you." I love that. I love the whole stair scene there where he runs up the steps so much that I even paid homage to it in a short film I did in college called A Duel of Retribution. Yeah, I really like this movie. I saw it a total of 8 times in theaters. But he fights Bane, and the second fight, he just kicks his ass. This is almost like Rocky 3, really, with Rocky against Mr. T, but Batman and Bane. He beats him, and he thinks he's the son of Ra's al Ghul. No, he gets stabbed, and Miranda Tate turns out to be Talia al Ghul, which you can see a lot of hints in. She always says that he doesn't have the will to do what is necessary, which is something her father said to him, and Batman Begins quite frequently. But it's such a great scene. Catwoman comes and rescues him, shoots Bane, and they have to stop Miranda Tate from getting the reactor and blowing up the city. They have this disruptor show. She can't blow it up remotely. It has to wait to deteriorate. So they have 11 minutes. Such an emotional third act. Great chase. Catwoman in the Bat Pod, and you have the Bat, the flying vehicle. Yeah, he doesn't have the tumbler in this, he doesn't glide, but he has a flying vehicle. Pretty much the Batwing. You have the other tumblers fighting, and then you just have him in the Batwing, and it's just amazing. Yeah, I love it. And he pretty much stops her. Spectacular fashion, it goes off a rail, and we have a twist. She flooded the gates to where the reactor was. Lucius Fox barely gets out, and Batman has to take it out or it blows up. You can't stop it. So he basically kisses Catwoman. Such an emotional scene. I love that moment. And then Gordon's just like, how will the people know who saved them? Who are you? And he's just like, a hero can be anyone. Even someone who does something as simple as put a coat around a young boy's shoulders to let him know the world hadn't ended. And then he's just like, Bruce Wayne? And he figures out it's Bruce Wayne. You have that flashback from Begins. Everything just ties up in this film so perfectly. He leaves. And Jonathan Blake's trying to get off. He has an exodus with the kids and everybody. The other guards blow up the bridge so they can't escape. They think they're going to blow up. Batman is seen. They see Batman fly off, blow up, and he dies. We then cut to Alfred. He's sad. Such an emotional scene. And then Gordon even has a line of dialogue that's a reading from A Tale of Two Cities. Jonathan Blake's just sick of the injustice because nobody's going to know who saved him, and James Gordon's just like, we do. It's the Batman. He has a statue. Everybody knows Batman's Bruce Wayne, and Gotham is safe. It's like an epilogue, basically. Then we get to a cool ending where Jonathan Blake picks up some stuff that Bruce Wayne left, and the lady says, you should use your middle name, Robin. And that's cool. That's why I mentioned the whole incarnations of the character of Robin. He turns out to be this version of Robin. Gets the coordinates to the Batcave, he sees it, and then we find out that a string of pearls are missing. We then cut to Alfred at that cafe in Paris, and it's like a Good Will Hunting scene. He goes there, he's sad, but then the ultimate payoff, you hear the music, and his face just says it all. Bruce Wayne survives. Selena Kyle's sitting across from him with pearls, and he ends up with Selena Kyle happy. He's smiling. He has his happy ending. And then we see John Blake go to the cave, and it ends with a waterfall to black. It is such a powerful ending. Now, I have a theory that Batman, he already did the autopilot, you find that out, but I think he either escaped before in the water, or when the building blew up, he set a decoy, because when they show the scenes of him in the cockpit like it's the end, he has that face like, this is it. You don't see the surroundings. You don't see what's outside of him. I'm thinking he had 2, or maybe he just flew it later, I don't know. But he got out somehow. And I love it because it's another reference to The Dark Knight Returns where he faked his death. I just love it. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I know that was kind of a ramble again. I rambled a lot more on these Batman reviews than my other reviews, but I really love this film. So my score, an A, a 4.5, and a 9.5 out of 10. It's a bit lower than 5 years ago. I actually gave it a perfect score last time. But these things bugged me when I first saw it, and it's mostly the editing and just the lazy writing in the middle. Now there's these complaints about plot holes, and really, they're making excuses. People who say that don't know what the hell a plot hole is. They really do not. I mean, this one, I think most of the complaints are people who probably didn't see Batman Begins that got into it in Dark Knight, because this one really ties a lot more to Batman Begins than it does The Dark Knight. Particularly Bruce Wayne, but Overall, it does have its flaws, but it's still a well-crafted film, and as we've seen from some of the recent superhero films, this is a strong film. It's not up there with Dark Knight, but it's still a pretty darn good film on its own. So yeah, an A, a 4.5 out of 5, and a 9.5 out of 10. Christian Bale gives the best performance of Bruce Wayne Batman in this. They eased up a bit on the voice, so it's in between Dark Knight and Batman Begins, and I like it. It's a happy medium. He trained for this movie. He got in the diet of like an Olympic trainer, so it's really cool to see him have that Olympic training and just his build, and also how he looked all ragged and how worn he looked at the beginning compared to the end. Him adding the strips of gray to make him look much older. He is a fantastic actor, and he did this right after getting an Oscar for The Fighter. So yeah, he gives the best performance of Batman and just goes all out on this last one. He gives it his all. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's pretty good as John Blake. Oh man, Anne Hathaway is fantastic as Selena Kyle. She's probably my personal favorite Catwoman. I just love everything about her. She has the sense of the comics and the animated series mixed in with Julie Newmar. I just love it. I also like the chemistry Anne Hathaway has with Christian Bale and the Batman-Selena Kyle dynamic. Tom Hardy, even though he can be hard to hear at times, is menacing under the mask. I mean, yeah, it's like Sean Connery and Darth Vader had a baby. Yeah, they're just guys in masks, man. He is just intimidating, and he like gained 30 pounds of muscle. He looks huge in this. Like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe that's freaking Shinzon from Star Trek Nemesis or Mad Max. I mean, he is intimidating and scary as hell. He really does play an intimidating force in this. Marion Cotillard's okay as Miranda Tate. I liked her better when she was Talia. Even with the death scene and all, she's pretty good, although they kind of make it seem like she's going to be the love interest of Bruce Wayne, and then they kind of have Selena Kyle, which I'm more personally happy with Selena Kyle, but it was just a little weird in that regard. Gary Oldman gives another great performance as Gordon, and probably this is his most complex and hurt. He doesn't have his family. He's dealing with the repercussions of the other one. There's something very Shakespearean, very tragic about this film. Michael Caine just knocks it out of the goddamn park in this, even with his limited time as Alfred. Morgan Freeman's great as Lucius. Oh yeah, you also have Matthew Modine as Foley. His character is kind of annoying to me because I thought he would have been better if he was working with Bane or a bad cop. Ultimately, the whole topic of like, we have enough hotheads and stuff, it still annoys me to this day because you didn't see him in Dark Knight. It'd be different if you had somebody from Dark Knight or Batman Begins that was with him. You would know the history. Here, you're supposed to know a history we did not see in between the 8 years of Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. So it just takes me out of it a bit. Ultimately, though, even with the flaws, it is very well directed. Christopher Nolan has his hands so intricately in this. He even did the chalk drawings for the bat signal scenes you see. And oh yeah, Hans Zimmer's score is amazing. Gotham's Reckoning and The Fire Rises is spectacular. I love this soundtrack. He did the score for Inception. James Newton Howard heard that and he's just like, you know what? I think I'm going to be a third wheel. Just work with Christopher Nolan by yourself, Hans, and I'm glad because Hans Zimmer gives the best soundtrack, the best score out of all three Batman films in this Dark Knight trilogy. It is an amazing soundtrack and just epic. Very kind of Legacy of Kain-like with a bit of his work in Dark Knight and The Lion King and Gladiator. I just love it. Freaking awesome song, man. That and yeah, I saw this in IMAX as well. As a matter of fact, I saw this a total of 8 times in theaters, including some free showings at my college. Yeah, I saw this the most times than any other movie I saw in theaters. So, the IMAX is spectacular. I love The Dark Knight for its scenes, but this one, they really spaced it out and thought about it well. The transitions from the standard 35mm to 70mm of IMAX is done very well. Like the scene where Catwoman betrays him and the gate shuts. It shuts, and right at the shut sound, it cuts to the IMAX footage. So they're better at transitioning in between the scenes. If it was up to me, I'd watch it all in the IMAX scenes, but I love it. I wish they did a whole movie in IMAX. He tops himself in this with the IMAX scenes. They know how to use it more, and just everything about this film is just an epic war film with a bit of a Shakespearean tragedy and ultimately a redemption story for Batman Bruce Wayne on his character journey. Not only does he go through a character arc from the beginning of this to the end, but from the beginning of Batman Begins to the end of Dark Knight Rises. I also like the use of practical effects in this, especially with a Batwing on lifts or just use of real explosions. IMAX cameras. Christopher Nolan took this comic book property and grounded it into reality. Not only making a great trilogy for comic book films, but just making a great film trilogy, period. And he really changed the genre with these 3 films. And it really shows you what you can do with these characters that have existed so long in comic books, how much you can elevate them and translate them into film. So yeah, I give it a 4.5 out of 5, 9.5 out of 10, and an A. The Dark Knight Rises is a superb film and a fantastic conclusion to the Dark Knight trilogy. Anyway, that is my quick review of The Dark Knight Rises, and that is my 200th video. Thank you all out there for watching. Thank you to all my subscribers for staying with me since day one or even after. Just thank you for sticking around. Here's to another 200 videos. I swear I got to 200 videos faster on this channel than my Dark Knight of Steel channel, but nevertheless, if you want to check out other reviews, I have my Dark Knight Rises initial review on my Dark Knight of Steel channel in the link below, and I also have my reviews for Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and the quick essay analysis reading from The Dark Knight on my other channel. Anyway, if you like this video, click the like button and feel free to comment. Let me know in the comments below, what did you think of The Dark Knight Rises? What is your favorite film out of the Dark Knight trilogy? I can't choose. I love all of them. It's like the Star Wars trilogy. It just depends what mood I'm in. But feel free to discuss the film in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. And yeah, subscribe for more videos. That is all for today.